Hello and welcome back. In this video, we are going to review service bus queues in little more details. We are going to learn a little more about the service bus queues, and we'll also go ahead and create the queue on the Azure portal, right? So you have more understanding of how the queuing system works with service bus. So let's quickly review what we just saw in the previous video, right? So just to reiterate, a queue is a simple temporary storage for all of your messages, right? So as in this picture, we can see the sender is sending messages to the queue, and there is a receiver on the other end that would receive the messages. And each message is received by only one receiver. And the main purpose of the service bus queues, along with the temporary storage, is that it also decouples the source and destination components so that they can continue processing at their own pace, right, without depending on each other's pace. So these are the service bus queues. Let's have a look at one scenario where a queue would be a perfect candidate to use in any kind of integration, right? So here on my screen, you can see that we have on the left hand side, we have the CRM system, right? Now the CRM system is holding all of the customer or the client related data for your company. And those data change a lot of times. Somebody is using their phone or their application, or somebody is using their the website, changing their names or changing their phone numbers, updating their addresses, shipping address, billing address, their date of birth. A lot of things keep on changing or updating in the CRM system at the same time. There might be users sitting across the world updating their data on your platform, and there might be your customer care assistants, customer care representatives, who might be updating a lot of user data in the CRM system. And let's say you have an integration that whenever something changes for any client in the CRM system, you want to send that change to the ERP so that your ERP system is also always in sync, right? So what happens here is whenever there is a change, let's say if I go and change my shipping address, for example, now that shipping address is updated in the CRM system, and CRM system would immediately generate a message, an XML or a JSON message, and write it to the queue, right? And at the same time, there are hundreds of thousands of other messages, other changes being happened, in the CRM system for a lot of other users. And so CRM is continuously sending this changed data to the queue. Now, on the other side, on the receiving side, you have your ERP system. Now, ERP system is also, you may have another integration there, but that integration is reading from this queue, right? Now, it can read a batch of the messages from the queue, but there might be a requirement that if the data is coming for the same customer, you don't want to process them, all of them, and in a parallel fashion. You want to use a sequential convoy, a kind of sequential processing, right? So that you don't end up overwriting the changes, right? So your receiving system can subscribe on this queue and receive messages one by one, right? So your CRM could be generating 100 messages per minute, and your receiving side, your ERP has to actually update the system, right? So it would receive the message, it has to update its SQL server or whatever database system they are using. It may have to do a couple of other things within the ERP and then complete that transaction, right? So the ERP on the receiving side might be processing 10 or 15 or maybe 20 messages per minute, right? Depending on the load. So all of the other messages are being piled up in the queue, and whenever the ERP would be ready to process them, it would keep on reading messages and continue processing, right? So this is one use case. Another use case, let's assume you're working for a bank and people are doing transactions in your ATM machines. At the same time, a lot of people are transacting using your mobile app or your browser or calling the customer service, right? So a lot of data are being updated in the system in your account ledger. and there might be other systems that are interested or are using the same data, so they need to be updated and kept in sync, right? So your sending system can keep on sending the updates to a queue. The queue would store all of these messages, and on the other hand side you would have a receiving system that would keep on receiving these messages as and when it's ready to process them, right? So these are service bus queues. Let's go ahead and create a queue on the Azure portal, right? So again, there are multiple ways to create queues on service bus. You can use the command prompt, you can use their other utilities, right? You can dynamically create queues using your code, but for the sake of simplicity, we are going to generate the queue on the Azure service bus using the Azure portal. Okay, so I'm on the home page of the Azure portal, right? And let's go ahead and create a queue. But before we can do that, queues are part of service bus, right? So we have to create the service bus first. So let's go ahead and search here, service bus, and let's click on this service bus. Right now there is no service bus, so let's create the first service bus here. Let's give it a name. We have to select the resource group. Let's select the existing resource group that we've created earlier, CI 101. So on this screen, we can select the resource group, right? We have created the CI 101 resource group in the earlier exercises. We'll continue using that. And here the namespace name. So service buses are identified by their namespace. Okay, so let's give it a name, and this has to be unique, not just for your organization but across Azure, across all organizations, right? So let's use CI 101 for example. Okay, it has to be more than 6 digits. CI cloud, let's put learn 360. Okay, this is good. So this is unique learn 360 because ultimately the endpoint is going to be learn 360.servicebus.windows.net. So, and this is unique over the internet, right? So that's why it needs to be a unique name for the namespace. And we'll leave the location as East US for now. And for the pricing tier, we are going to select the standard tier. Now you could choose the basic tier, but there are some of the other features. For example, topics, you cannot create the topics in the basic tier, right? So I'm going to select the standard tier and let's review and create. Okay, so it has validated that all of these details are okay to go ahead. Let's click on create. And now it would create the service bus namespace for us, and it would deploy that for us to be to make it ready to use. Okay, so the deployment is now complete. Let's click on go to resource and it will take us to the service bus page. Okay, here. So this is our service bus. It's ready for us to use. Okay, and we've selected the standard tier. And this is the host name that we just gave it, right? learn360.servicebus.windows.net. Okay, so we've just created this service bus. Now let's create the queue. Here you can see this plus queue icon that would allow you to create the queue. Now you can use any name. Now this doesn't have to be unique across the internet, right? Now you created this service bus for your organization, and whatever names you create are unique within your organization, right? So for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to give it a name of CRM inbound queue. And then you can select the size of the queue. Let's leave it to 1 GB, and max delivery count, let's leave it to 10 for now. There are some more properties here, right? Which you can review later. And let's click on create. There are a few more properties here, for example, partitioning and sessions, and if you want to forward them, if you want to use the duplicate detection, but you can review them later when you actually start working on with the hands-on exercises, right? Let's just go ahead and create this queue. So again, the portal itself would create the queue for us, and here you can see that we've created the queue for us to use. And right now we can see if there are any messages. There is no message right now, right? So 0 active messages. Okay, so we've just created queue. It's this simple, and then we can use this URL basically to send messages to this queue, to this one particular queue, right? We can use this endpoint, and there are multiple ways to send messages to this queue. You know, if the other systems are sending messages to this queue, you can give them the SDK from Azure, and there's a sample code available. For example, how to build a .NET based application to send messages to this queue, how to Java or PHP or any other application to send messages to this queue, right? So there we go. We just created the service bus namespace, and we also created the queue. Okay, I hope you're understanding what these queues are. We're going to make a lot of use for these queues in the upcoming videos and exercises, so don't worry. We're going to use them a lot more in the exercises that we'll do in the upcoming videos. Thank you very much. See you in the next one.